the COVID management now slightly under wraps, it'd be good to get out and obviously meet some of you face to face as well. What I wanted to do this morning with everybody is to take you through essentially a 30-minute crash course specifically aimed at you guys in the hospice sector that hopefully gives you guys some clarity, some factual insight, and probably gets you away from some of the misconceptions in the news as well, which aren't always helpful at the moment. So I'm just going to take you through this morning very quickly the kind of agenda and the things we've got going on. So as you can see there on the slide, somebody's mic. We're going to cover off various topics this morning, and hopefully by the end of the meeting there'll be some good appetite for you guys to come back to myself and David and Katie, the team at HQP, with any questions that we can hopefully answer now. For the benefit of doubt, we will also be sending out this presentation on email to everyone, so it's readily available as well. Again, if there's any questions that come up in a day's time or a week's time, we're hopefully here to help you guys with those.
And if there's any questions that you have during this call, if you could put them in the chat and we can address them at the end of the call.
So just very, very quickly, a bit of what I call housekeeping on my part. We at the Focus Group, we've worked with HQP for some time now. Originally, we became a preferred supplier for telecoms and basically landline mobile telecom services with the HQP. More recently, we've also worked with other channels and other significant partners who are noted here on the slide you can see in front of you. Your eyes may get drawn to the Labour Party, which is always an interesting icebreaker, but we work in automotive as well. We work throughout the care sector, and a lot of these household brands are obviously brands that you guys would have, had exposure to over recent years. Now, coming away from just the people we work with, because we are involved in telecoms, energy, and additional services that we can provide to our partners, we do have Ofgem accreditation. We're now an affiliated member of the Ombudsman scheme, the Alternative Dispute Resolution scheme, and we've also got some rather, accreditations, I guess, that we're proud of in other parts of our business too. Now, big area of concern for me is that when we're dealing with our hospice partners and anyone in the care sector, outside of today's meeting, we're getting into often a tender process, a cost review process, where just looking for the cheapest tariffs is not always the most important thing. And with the costs rising at the rate they are at the moment, it's now about looking at longer term strategies for you guys in the hospice sector. So a lot of the work we do here at Focus with the HQP members is about cost analysis. Where can we bring the cost down? But with the way things are at the moment, it's also about having some longer term strategies in mind, which I will come on to later on. And the whole idea here is it's not just about cost comparison. There are things we do outside of that, and we want to make sure that we're supporting you guys every step of the way. Now, one of the things I think everyone on this call would have been subject to this year is various things on BBC News, on ITN News, Sky News, in the papers you pick up in the morning, where all of our problems for energy and the cost of energy in the UK rather lazily gets put down to what's happening within Russia and the Ukraine conflict. The actual brass tacks of this problem is that the UK has several problems all coinciding in a short period of time. So it's actually creating a perfect storm, and that's why we've seen these rather significant cost hikes across electricity and across the cost of gas as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take you guys through each one of these points and just give you a bit more meat on the bones to help you guys understand quite why the problems are as bad as they are. And some of these things you may already be aware of. Some of these issues may be complete, brand new news to you. So insufficient gas storage. We in the UK, historically, we've imported large volumes of gas from mainland Europe, from Russia, through Norway, through interconnectors into the UK. Back in 2017, we used to operate a Centrica owned storage facility, and that storage facility housed up to 40% of our usable gas at any one time. That storage facility was closed, and it's only just been reopened in the last couple of months. So for the last 5 years, we've had to import more gas into this country than ever before. And obviously, when we're importing gas, we're bidding for that gas, we're trying to purchase it, we're bidding against the rest of Europe for that gas that we need to power the UK and keep us up and running. Moving away from that, LNG may be a phrase that some of you have heard, it may be alien. So LNG is a form of gas where it's basically converted into a liquid form, it's condensed, and it takes up 1/600th of the volume of normal gas. So it's a very, very appealing way to basically supplement our gas income and supplement how much gas we need at any one time. So in recent times, when we've had problems getting mains gas into the UK, we will actually go out to places like America, places like Texas, where they create a lot of this LNG stock. We will bid for this different form of gas. We will buy it. It comes in on massive container ships. It gets offloaded at a couple of ports in the UK. The problem we have at the moment is that the cost of this LNG stock is horrific, because we, like the rest of Europe, are bidding for this stock to supplement the levels of gas we need during the colder months. So again, that's another factor in the constant rise that you're seeing in the overall price of gas at the moment. With various other things we have going on in the UK at the moment, renewables, the additional wind turbines. Where I am on the south coast, we're just down the road from Brighton. We've now got hundreds of wind turbines out at sea. The energy network operators will have us all believe that they foot the bill for that. You, myself, the homeowners, the hospice owners, these third-party costs to supplement renewable projects are all built into the unit prices we pay for electric and gas. So the more renewable stuff we see happening physically, either on the hills where they build wind turbines, out at sea, every one of us involved in this call is also footing the bill for some of these projects. One of the biggest ones that I'll come on to, and I'll skip slightly ahead here, is the shutdown of the Nord 1 gas mains pipeline coming out of Russia via the Ukraine into Germany, throughout mainland Europe. Nord 1 has been damaged. It's also been sabotaged. Yet to be proven. We believe it is true. And that main way of exporting gas from Russia, where it's generated, into mainland Europe, eventually to the UK, that has been completely disabled, and it has been for some months now. So that is also a significant, I guess, geopolitical issue that's affecting the UK. And the final thing is that when we have the generation of clean, green, renewable energy, the stuff we all want, if we're not creating enough of that, we will often have to go back to the dark ages of using gas to help create energy and electricity. Again, if the gas price is high, the associated power price will also be extremely high. So these things, and again, there's 5 headlines on this slide. All 5 of these have come about at the same time during the course of the last 18 months. And that's why the news every night pretty much now has some sort of headline about energy costs or the cost of gas. We can't get away from these issues. I don't want to sort of lose the room and kind of bore everyone with too much graph work, too much analysis, too many numbers. But when Katie and I emailed this communication out to everyone, you will see on this graph at your own leisure that the cost of electricity, even back in the summer of 2021, autumn 2021, was already rising. We've now seen the buy price for electric go from £100 a megawatt up to over £600 a megawatt, and that's in a space of 18 months. So what we're saying is, when you read the news and you see a headline that says the cost of energy has risen to more than 5 times the level it was 2 years ago, that is not sensationalism. That is actually a pretty good summary. What we're now seeing, of course, is the cost of electricity is going up, the cost of gas is going up, and also a lot of these network operator costs, these third-party charges, are also rising, that are hidden and bundled away into the unit prices we all pay. And I'll come on to that a little bit more later on. So we talk about headlines, we talk about sensationalism, and we talk about some of the stuff that goes out in the news not being too accurate. This is a little snippet that I took from the Daily Express back in October. And actually, it's quite an accurate snippet. It really does help summarise for anyone at the moment who needs to think about budgets. This is where we're at. So if a hospice was paying 100k a year, for example, you may now be budgeting for over £500,000 going ahead for your electricity costs. And this is hard hitting stuff. So on the left hand side here, I've said, really, with the way energy prices have been going, with the way the cost of gas has been going, staffing costs are obviously a huge cost for the hospice. But with the way power and gas costs are now, the cost of actually keeping the hospice warm, keeping it up and running, is now just as prominent as a staffing cost. And with the way the prices are going, and with energy suppliers all hiking up their out of contract rates, it would not be financially prudent or particularly clever for any hospice partner on this call to allow their hospice to ever go out of contract at the moment on any of their supply contracts, because this is hard hitting stuff. To give you an example of that, if we were quoting today, the cost of electric could be anywhere between 50 and 60p. An out of contract rate being levied by a supplier at the moment could be well in excess of 85, 90p upwards. And some suppliers are even going as high as over £1 a unit. So these are significant numbers that are being levied towards all of us at the moment. Now, coming away for a moment from some of the nitty gritty, I think one of the hot topics that we're all dealing with at the moment is the government's application, the government's rollout of the business energy relief scheme, which actually has been quite a good scheme. The couple of things I wanted to cover off here is, for any of you that have recently negotiated contracts, the scheme only runs from the 1st of October to the 31st of March. And actually, I've just spotted an error in my own work, because the billing period on here is the 1st of October this year, not last year. So that's a mistake on my part. But the whole point is, for any of you who've entered into new contracts throughout 2022, you will be getting relief, or you should be getting relief on your bills from October this year through to the end of March coming. If you're receiving bills, any of you, and you're not sure if the correct amount of relief's being applied, or if you cannot see that it's being applied, that's for Katie, David and myself to take a look at that and assist you with that. So do by all means point those queries in my direction. But basically, what Ofgem are doing every week now is they're publishing updated figures every week on their website every Tuesday night, and it shows you the level of relief they're applying to your bills, to your unit price, based on when the customer, yourself, signed their new contracts. And again, it does get a little bit nitty gritty. We are absolutely here to help you with that. So for the benefit of the room, what I've got at the bottom of this slide is just a summary of a cost comparison we did recently for a customer, where on the right hand side we've actually been able to show the level of discount that would be applied to their spend. And again, this is something we can do for anyone we work with. The important thing to note here as well is that the government relief at the moment only runs until the 31st of March. It absolutely can be revoked at any time. As scary as that sounds, it can be. So for any of you guys that are negotiating contracts at the moment or about to negotiate contracts, my advice would be don't necessarily rely on this relief because it can be removed at any point by the government. Equally, one of the questions you may ask me at the end of this call is, do we know if the relief's going to be extended? The honest answer is we don't think it will be at the moment. There's nothing firm or concrete to suggest that it is going to be extended. So again, please don't bank on that when you're doing your forecasting and your budgeting for the year ahead. What I really wanted to sort of drill down into now is the little nuggets, the little bits of information that can really help you guys out today and help out any of the hospices going forward. So on this slide here, we've got 5 key points, and these 5 things are things that would genuinely make a difference when you guys are looking at your costs, you're looking at any contract negotiations, etc., etc. So one of my favorite ones is at the top. For any of you here that are involved in tendering at the moment, any of you that are involved in taking on any new retail sites or new premises at the moment, please take a look at your bills. If anything's out of contract, it needs to be dealt with absolutely ASAP. If any of your sites you're taking on at the moment, or you're changing tenancy, you're gaining occupancy of a new premise, make sure they're picked up and dealt with regards to energy tariffs. Because if they're not, they'll be automatically defaulted onto a variable tariff, onto an out of contract tariff. And as I mentioned earlier on, they will be in excess of 80p a unit for power, which is an eye-watering number to band around. So in your own time, when you're next doing your reviews, do sort of make 10-15 minutes, have a sweep of any of your recent energy bills, and just make sure that none of your sites are on variable out of contract tariffs. Again, that's where we can hopefully add value going forward. One of my favorite ones that seems to be a hot topic at the moment is for any member or any attendee on this call, for any of your sites that are getting meter operator costs or data operator costs passed through on a bill, absolutely flag that up to one of us. Network operators have a tendency at the moment to pass through additional costs that you won't have budgeted for onto your electricity billing. Often they get hidden away on the bill. Somebody just marks a bill, stamps the bill saying okay to pay. These are costs that are often passed through the network operators, and we can actually reduce those costs for you. I won't bore you all with the sort of gritty details of that today, but if you do have questions, we can pick those up offline. Probably another area that I'm particularly sort of passionate about myself is when we're looking at contracts and we're looking at offers and we're looking at rate reviews for clients, is making sure that we understand, is a tariff or is the offer fully fixed? If it's not fully fixed, what are the additional elements that could be passed through? Because at the moment we're in a sort of economic struggle, and we're in a struggle with power prices and gas prices where suppliers will often have terms and conditions that are certainly levered in their favour and not the favour of you guys, customer. So we need to make sure collectively that when we're looking at cost comparisons, when we're looking at maybe entering into new contracts, that these prices are indeed fully fixed. And if they're not fully fixed, we need to understand which elements are being passed through and what that additional cost could look like to you guys, the end user. KVA charges forms part of that. I think my other sort of hot topic at the moment is understanding volume tolerances. So for anyone on the call today who is helping to run a hospice with a high gas consumption, gas contracts will often have volume tolerances built into them. In plain English, what that means to all of us is that you might be forecasted to use X amount of consumption. If you go 20% over that, you could be financially penalised. If you go 20% under that, you could be financially penalised. And a lot of these gas providers have slightly different terms and conditions on that. So my advice to anyone on the call, when you're looking at larger consuming gas contracts, rate reviews, you need to understand, and we can help you with that, whether there's a volume tolerance built into that contract or whether there isn't. And if there is, we need to approach it with a little bit of caution, because that's a hidden cost that could sting you towards the end of the contract. And these are all things that do make a heck of a difference on the overall bottom line cost. Coming away from energy for a moment, because I think certainly more of the HQP members that I deal with at the moment, and also some of our SME clients outside of this that we deal with, everyone's asking me about water deregulation. Can we save money on our additional water cost? Can we save money on our monthly billing? I think for anyone who deals with water billing on this call, I think we'll all agree that the sort of water market is very much a bit of a dog's dinner, a bit of a, how do I put this, an overly complex industry for us all to work in. So for some years now, the Scottish water market's been opened up, it's been deregulated successfully. And because there's only one wholesaler up in Scotland, which is Scottish Water, there are some very, very keen savings to be had. In the English water market, the savings aren't as rich, they aren't as fruitful. However, again, it's not just about cost. So we've been doing some work with some of our HQP members, looking at areas where we can make value adds, help you guys out a little, make life a little bit easier. Things like group multi-site billing, getting everything with one water retailer, that's often a quick win. Looking at meter installations and leak detection, really, really important to me. You do not want to be in a position where you're paying for water that's maybe leaking out of a mains pipe and you don't even know about it. Some of the water retailers we're now partnered with have some very, very good leak detection software, which we can pass on to our partners and our clients alike. Looking at analytics, looking at consumption reporting. For some of you on the call that like to get really sort of down into the detail, there are some fantastic things now going on in the water market, which again, we can pass on to members that we work with and people that we work with. And then final thing, which I think we're all passionate about, is just having the improved account management that goes with that as well. I talk to far too many HQP members at the moment and people outside of the call alike, who seem to get a hell of a lot of bills from different retailers. It's all rather messy, can't always get into the detail how they would like. This is a good way of tidying up some of that administration pain that you guys have to deal with. So I think I've probably bored everyone for long enough now and given people hopefully some good food for thought. I think, Katie, it's a good time to probably open up and look at some of the questions we had.
Yeah, I mean, we have had a question from Georgina Grace from Hampshire Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust, and she's just asked, is it worth looking at climate change levy as well? They're paying this on their hospice site, which is outside the scope of the tax and considered as a domestic. So they've got that refunded.
Yeah, so there seems to be, and that's a really, really good question, actually. So there seems to be a lot of disparity about how the various energy companies deal with this. So for any main hospice, normally we'd look to make sure that the hospice members completed VAT declaration forms and applied the reduced VAT to the bill, which in turn would normally then remove the CCL element from the bills. Where this comes into a real grey area is with the retail shops. because what the energy suppliers will do is they will have to work with us to appease HMRC and make sure that these shops are being used as part of the sort of charitable non-for-profit part of the business. If there's any inkling that they can, the retail shops can generate funding, it's not all directly going back into the hospice. Some suppliers will try and use that as a mechanism to not reduce the CCL element, but it normally comes back to, at the start of the contract, have VAT declaration forms being completed, which should basically knock the CCL element off from the bill. I think if there's a specific case there where obviously Hampshire Hospice aren't getting that CCL taken off their bills, I think I'd probably like to pick that up offline and see if there's anything we can do to help with that, because it doesn't sound like it's necessarily been set up correctly.
Hi James, no, I did get it back, but it was it took 6 months and I got the bit between my teeth and I ended up having to send it HMRC. So I wasn't aware that it was a possibility with the retail shops.
They
The
don't
way
shout
I read the
about it.
legislation, it was just the hospice site, so I haven't gone as far as looking at it.
Yeah, we've had this a lot, and you're in good company with raising that question. It's a really good question, because energy companies, if you get the VAT declaration forms in when the new contract starts, most of the time they set them up properly. They do what we tell them to do. Not always, I might add. Where they don't like it is when it's a bit like you've said, after the event, after the horse has bolted. So we had one recently where there was about 18 months worth that hadn't been billed with the correct level of VAT and CCL, and we were fighting hard to get it back, and it became very, very clear that the supplier just didn't want to credit it back. So we had to then go, how I'd say it, through the back door and deal with HMRC directly, which is, as you can imagine, it's quite a painful process. But yeah, anything for anyone on this call who's not sure what the CCL exemption rules are and what the VAT rules are, or perhaps just haven't had the right advice on it, I'd advise you all to pick that up with us online, because I think it is quite a grey area, and these suppliers just do not make it easy for you all.
Do we have any more questions?
James, yes, can you just, I know time's limited, but what exactly is the KVA charges?
The KVA charges are basically availability charges that are they normally get applied to any hospice or any large user of electric that has a half-hourly electricity meter. You may not know if your main hospice meter is half-hourly or not, but I could tell you in minutes offline. It wouldn't take me long at all. But long story short, the KVA charge is basically an allocation of power availability at any one time from your local network operator. So you'll automatically, as a large consumer of power, you'll be given a level of KVAs that you can basically have to ensure that when you boot up all of your equipment, or you operate the hospice during your busiest time, that you're not getting a blackout, you're not getting any sort of power outs or anything tripping, in the switch cabinet. It just means that you can draw a certain amount of power at any one time from the supplier, from the local network. What tends to happen, we tend to see it a lot where somebody might have a KVA allowance of, say, 500, but when we look back through their billing, we look back through the network data, they're only ever sort of spiking at 200 KVAs. So you're actually paying then for like an allowance that you don't actually need in full, and we can get that reduced down for you. I always liken it, and it's probably not the best analogy, but it's a bit like having a all-inclusive minutes plan on a mobile phone, and then you work out that you're only using your phone very sort of sparsely throughout the month. You're paying for something you just don't need. And the problem is when you switch from one electricity provider to another, that never gets picked up by the suppliers. Like, they just continue to pass through that level of KVA that you've always had. So there is a better way of answering it. It does get a little bit confusing, but with a look at a bill and with a look at the historic network data, we could identify that for a client very, very quickly. And it's just like I say, why pay for something if you don't need to use all of it,
James, we've got 2 more questions that have come through. I can see Louise has also got a hand up, so I don't know if we can answer these quite quickly, because I'm
I'll try my best. Yep.
So we've got a question from Kevin McGill, and he's asked, will energy costs stabilise, or is the minimum term outlook, so that is in the next 3 to 5 years, to remain similar to this year? So that is it volatile and expensive?
Trust Kevin, my good friend Kevin, to ask me the really awkward question, the one that I don't want to lie through my teeth about. So Kevin, good morning, good to see you again.
How you doing?
I think realistically, and Katie and I were talking about this offline earlier, it's a difficult question to answer. A lot of the forecasting I'm seeing does suggest that we're in for a rough ride between now and the midpoint of 2024. It will get better in the UK. The way we're buying the LNG stocks is getting better already. We've just announced quite a big partnership with the States to have a more regular supply of LNG stocks coming into the UK. So I'm quietly confident, Kevin, that I think as we come into sort of Q3 of 2024, that will be sufficient times, lapsing for things to ease off and get better for us. Going further ahead from there, and again, trying to keep this concise and short, one of the things that the government did do this year was sign off quite a big nuclear project for the UK as well, which is hugely, massively unpopular, but overall in the long term, it will bring electricity costs down rather notably. So I think the honest answer for me is don't expect any significant drops between now and the midpoint of 2024. But beyond that, I do truly believe it will start to fall again and fall consistently.
Thanks, James. Just put that rating for us.
How did I know that was coming?
Julie
Thanks,
Clayton's
Kevin.
asked, if you're due to fix before March, is there any benefit to fixing now or waiting until the new year, because it feels pretty bleak?
The honest answer to that, again, and I feel like the prophet of doom, Katie, you give me a tough crowd now. I think the honest answer is you're waiting for good news that probably won't come. We're just entering the period now, so obviously we're down on the south coast. We've had our first frost this morning. Everyone's getting a bit carried away with it. What will happen is, as we see the next few weeks come along with this prolonged cold snap that we're forecast to get, both gas demand and power demand will go through the roof. Price and the wholesale cost price of power and gas will also go up. And that's before the energy suppliers obviously apply their profit margin to the cost. So I don't think you're going to get any real benefit or massive reduction in price by waiting another week or two, or maybe a month or two. If anything, it would probably have the adverse effect.
Okay.
Sorry, it's not good news.
I'm mindful we've got Louisa, you've had your hand up for a while, and Andrew has got a question. So if we have them as the last questions, if everyone's okay to hang on, and if you're okay to answer that. So Louisa, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, mine's not about the markets. I'm quite aware of our current situation. It's more about the kind of what you can offer, because we are due to renew. We've worked with a broker at the minute. We're due to renew electricity of our main contract in the summer, and then gas next year. One of the big things for me is water, which you've mentioned, because that just feels like a massive headache for me, and it is an issue, but also about bill monitoring, because it's we don't have an expert in our finance department. I certainly don't have time to monitor every bill. I know that we're being charged too much for CCL, so we're currently on that at the minute. I know we're being charged too much for VAT, so we're currently on that at the moment. But it's like, I'm assuming all those things are services that you offer, and is that tied up within terms of brokerage, or is that separate contracts, or it's just interesting to see how the service works.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. So I don't want to get into this world where broker A has a pop at broker B, and broker C says something different, because it's a dark old world out there, as it is, without us all fighting. But put simply, we don't charge anything for those additional costs. Our commission, our profit generation, if you like, is made from the procurement, and I'll be very honest and transparent about that. And we've actually got a very good treating customers fairly document that we created quite recently in the summer, that we send out to any new partner that we work with, so you can see how we act, how we behave. But long story short, all those little things that are obviously quite clearly pain points for you, I'd expect those to basically hit our desk and be part of the kind of onboarding process of trying to win your business, because there are consultancies out there who will charge for this service, charge for that service, and actually we've kind of taken a view that at Focus, because we work in the telecom sector, the mobile telecom sector, we often work with partners who have 3 or 4 lines of products with us already. So we would rather make a smaller margin over a bigger service portfolio rather than, you know, trying to get rich quick, quite frankly. So I think picking up maybe offline with you, I think I would always say to any client that I'm dealing with for the first time, what are the pain points at the moment? Because some of the members I talk to have got a really good handle on this stuff. They've just done it themselves historically. Some other members we talk to are pulling their hair out and just need the sort of sanity check and the support of Focus behind them and the HQP. So yeah, any pain points, I think, throw them my way, and we're sort of, I'll get some extra grey in my stubble and we look at those together.
Yeah, brilliant. I've already emailed Katie to sort of say how we can get together, because it's yeah, something I need to prioritise
I'll
now.
introduce you. Yeah.
Brilliant.
And then one very last question from Andrew Burrell. Are we able to claim back third-party charges? EDF has said that they've written to inform of charges but not received, but it's only a small amount.
I'd probably have to take a look at what they've actually communicated. I think a lot of these third-party charges are, if they're being added on to bills and they weren't specified at the point of sale, I think that would probably be something that needs to go as a formal complaint to the supplier. This comes back to what I said earlier on during the course of the webinar, where we spoke about understanding if contracts are fully fixed or if additional costs are being passed through that were kind of built into the terms and conditions of that specific contract. We have seen this happen more certainly in the last 2.5 years than I've seen in the 12 years prior of doing this job. So I think that would be one that we'd probably need to pick up offline and just understand what are the costs they're passing through.
Okay.
We saw it with Opus Energy. So to give you a context to that, we saw Opus Energy pass through quite a lot of additional costs in the last 2 years to clients who are under the impression they're on fully fixed contracts. And when you actually delve into the real sort of murkiness and the kind of nitty gritty of the, you know, the terms and conditions, they're levered in such a way that legally they can pass through additional cost mid-contract. But to add some more context to that, you don't see it happen that often. So I'd probably like to see what it is they're actually passing through and if they're actually permitted to do that or not.
Okay, that's fine. I'll follow that up outside of this. Thank you.
No problem at all. Thank you.
That's all the questions. I'd just like to thank everyone for your time today. If there's any other questions you have, obviously feel free to drop me or James an email and we'll get them answered for you. And as I say, we'll forward on the presentation following the call. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks
James.
everyone.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all. Thank you.
Cheers. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.